Del Campo here. You know, I used to do all these radiators, and it's been many years, but we've got a couple of radiators here, and I decided to tear one down. I owned 2 radiator shops. Owned one, sold it, later opened up another one. So for 11 years, I worked on radiators. Worked on thousands of them. This was in the 70s, all through from 1971. You know, I was in the military, and then in the late 70s and all through till the late 80s. I worked in radiator shops. I really understand these things. And what I'm going to show you is how we tear one down before we rot it out. And I'm going to explain a little bit about the process and let you see what the inside of a radiator looks like. At the end, stay around for the end. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happened to radiator shops and why they're gone now. There's 2 brackets on the side. There's one on this side, one on this side. But this one already fell off. Not unusual. This is from a Dodge Dart, 1966 Dodge Dart. Very common A-body radiator for Chrysler products. So I'm going to light the torch up, and I'm going to take this bracket off, and then I'm going to pull one of the tanks. I'm going to pull this tank off as if we were going to clean the radiator out. I don't think we're really going to clean it out, but at least you can look at it and see what it looks like. Also, while I'm standing here showing you this is typical of radiators. All this green crud right here in the corners. Those are called header leaks. This is the header plate. This is where the tubes go into the header plate. What happens is, after years and years of this radiator pressurizing and swelling up and coming back and swelling up and coming back for hundreds of thousands of miles, the tubes start to pull out on the corners. It's called header leaks. When you see this, you know you got a problem. But I thought I'd tear one down, show you what it looks like, show you what some of the problems are. You still can fix them, but the price is kind of high. But before I pull the tank off, you have to pull the brackets off because the brackets are soldered to the tank. Steel brackets onto a brass tank. Not unusual. The solder came undone, the bracket already fell off. So, you know, this radiator was only half held in there. So I got to get that off before I can go any further. So that's coming off first. Off of the brackets. Let's see how this is. You got to melt the solder in there. That one's off. You know, you're not trying to melt the metal, you're just trying to melt the solder that's under there. There, that thing's done. Get it out of the way. It's hot. Right here is a seam. This tank, this is called a bucket header or a bowl header. Instead of being this header plate being flat, it's a little bit bowl shaped. So the seam is up here. So I'm going to heat this seam, and the solder's going to spit out of there a little bit, and I'm going to have to tap on this thing until the tank comes loose. Then we'll flip it over and do the other side. Let's see the solder spit. You see the solder spitting out of there? Going over that way. I forgot to clamp that. While I'm heating that, maybe you can put something there and clamp it. So you see that solder spitting out of that seam? Time to put the radiator over. guys beating the hell out of these to get them apart, and they bend the tanks all up. And you'll see tanks in old cars, and the tanks are all bent up. Try not to do that. This car's gonna fall. I don't want it to fall.
Can you grab it by the...
I'm gonna try to grab it, but it's hot. Being stubborn. Come on.
Don't worry, I'll cut out the work. I'll only put
It might be crimped right there.
You want a screwdriver?
This clamp down with gravity clamp. Big piece of wood holding it. Let's see what we've got. Are these tubes? The water flows down, or coolant flows down through there. But look at these guys. This was not cooling too well because there's all this crud down. You see where these tubes are plugged up with a lot of stuff, and that's old crud from inside the engine and rust and what they call solder bloom, which is lead oxide. But anyway, what a rod out is you put this thing in the hot tank and try to soak that stuff up a little bit and make it so it's softer. And then they have rods that are skinny little rods that are wide, so they're like a long piece of sheet metal. And you stick them down through there and you unclog all that stuff and brush this all off. Then in this groove, you tin this back up. You get it all clean inside there with all fresh solder. Do the same thing with the tank. Then you put the tank on and you solder it back on. That's what a rod out is. But this radiator's is pretty bad. You know, it's old and it's got header leaks. So it's probably seen better days, but we could probably fix it. It's gonna take a lot of flux and a lot of work, but we could fix it.
How do you fix the header leaks?
Okay, what you do, you used to call this running the header. And what they would do to fix the header leaks is you put all flux and acid stuff down there, what it takes to get all this out of there and heat this all up and resolder all those tubes onto this header plate. You got all fresh solder on there. It's a lot of work to do that. Flush it all out with water to make sure you get all the flux out of there. And then you got a rotted out radiator, which would probably work for a long time. It's just not economically feasible to do anymore. Because the amount of labor I'd have in doing this, you could buy 2 new radiators from the imported radiators, you know. But if you want an original radiator that looks right, we can still do this. We can get these cores. You can buy this whole core and put your tanks on it and have a fresh, brand new radiator core. And they make them on, these tubes are on 9/16 centers. You can get radiator cores now that are on 7/16 centers, and you can get the fins, tighter fin count, and tighter tube count, and you can bring the efficiency of the radiator way up. And the advantage of that is on this bottom tank, you really can't put 3 rows in there. See what they do on a 3-row radiator is they'd add like another row of tubes here, but that header tank, that tank on the bottom isn't big enough to accept that. So what you do is you cut that tank, you just spread it open and silver solder. It's kind of dicey, but you can do it. And then you have a 3-row radiator. I prefer to go with the higher fin count and the higher tube count. Okay, here's the tank we pulled off. They call this the tank. It's actually like half the tank. Coolant goes in here from the engine, comes into this thing that spreads the coolant out, and it shoots it out like this. I don't know why that hole's there. That's something, don't know what that's, somebody working on it in the past. Now when I had these things, what I always did, it's still a little warm, but I think I can handle it now with my hands. I would unsolder, I'd heat this up, pop that filler neck off, and clean that all up and put new solder in there, what they call tin it. And then I'd put that on there with fresh solder. The same thing with this neck right here. I'd clean that all up and resolder that. And if that thing's too bent up or cracked or something, you know, we had new ones. They're getting kind of dirty now, but you know, I had all kinds of new filler necks, everything. You want to pull this bottom tank off, and you can reset this and reset the flange for the petcock. And if you're going to re-core it, put a new radiator, of course you got to pull the bottom tank off and clean it up and everything, and then put it all together. And you can either rot it out or put a new core in it. I've done both a lot, thousands of them. You look in here and there's all this crud. This thing's probably a third of the way plugged up. Third, maybe halfway plugged up, because we don't really know what's down in all those tubes yet. But you know, this poor old slant 6 going down the road, when you start going 50, 60 miles an hour and loading the engine, it does put more of a load on it. When you're going that fast, they'll start to overheat. So when you get a car that overheats at 50, 60, 70 miles an hour, you know you're getting air through here. You're getting tons of air through here because you're going down the road. But the coolant can't get through these passages. So the car will start to overheat. It's real common to have a car overheat at speed when you have clogged radiator or fin damage or something like that. If you're overheating at slow speed, like in town, and you're not loading the engine real hard, something plugged up like this will probably be enough. But if it's overheating at low speed, it's probably the fan not pulling air. And that could be the electric fan isn't working right, or an engine-driven fan. I have found radiators, I mean, this is just no kidding. I pulled radiators out, and there's like a mat right here of cat hair or dog hair, just like a blanket. And that will overheat all the time because you can't get air through it. Can't get air through it going fast or slow, especially with air conditioning cars, because there's an air conditioning condenser in front of this, and all that hair gets up between there, and nobody can see it till you pull the radiator out. And then the hot tank the radiator and blow all the hair out of it, and it works. Kim was asking me what happened to the radiator business. What happened to the radiator business is very inexpensive imports started coming in. And the first ones that came in weren't very good. Like when they make these radiators, they dip this header plate into solder. It's all brand new soldered stuff. So all they have to do is dip it, and the solder flows into where it needs to flow into. And then they take an air hose and they blow this end out to make sure the solder gets out of all the tubes. Then they do the same thing the other end. But the first imports that came in, really cheap stuff, came in from Korea and came in from Indonesia and Singapore. Those were the main ones, the first cheap radiators. They'd overheat right out of the box. And the problem is they'd be all solder plugged, because when they dipped that, they wouldn't blow the solder out of there. So you'd have brand new radiator and it's 99 or maybe 100% plugged with solder. And we used to laugh at that. But you know what? They got better at it.
And what year did they influx?
Oh, that started in the mid 80s. Maybe 84, 85, somewhere in there. So they got better at it, of course. You know, they couldn't sell that crap. So as the radiators got better, and they were still cheap, pretty soon you could just go to a parts store and you could buy a radiator. Because tearing this down and doing all this, I used to charge about $60 to do that. This is back in the day. You got $60 is a lot more money than it is today. But you could buy a new radiator for $60 or $50 from Korea or Singapore, some from India. I mean, you know, they were cheap. So what happened? Two things happened. I was in California, so the CFC thing, where they stopped allowing you to use R12, I got hit with that and with the cheap radiators. So people wouldn't pay to have the radiator fixed. They just go get another one. And that's kind of what happened to the radiator business. But some radiator shops survived because there's still truck radiators out there. They didn't have cheap ones from imported cheap radiators. And out there where I was, a very agricultural area, and there were a lot of pumps, and it didn't rain a lot in California. So they had to irrigate, and they'd have like a big Lincoln V8 or some 6-cylinder Chevys or something out there in the fields running with a fan on a radiator. And when that radiator plugs up, or it doesn't start, or it stops cooling, or it leaks, man, those farmers would come in with the radiator, and they want me to fix it right now, and they'd pay whatever, they'd offer you more money. They'd double the money if you could get on it right now. So the people that survived in the radiator business are probably doing agricultural work or some kind of industrial work, but there wasn't enough of that to go around to keep all the radiator shops open, because automotive was the main business, and it just went away with all the cheap imported radiators.
You've told me before that, you know, every little town had a shop and everybody brought their cars in. It was just the way it was done.
Oh, the town I was in was probably 40,000 people. There were 3 shops, and we were all busy. In the wintertime, when it was like you have some cold days, I'd need some heaters, but it was hard to stay busy and pay your bills in the winter. But in the summertime, I had cars lined up outside. Everybody was busy. Yeah, a town of 40,000 people had 3 radiator shops, and all 3 of us were busy, busy, busy. To wrap this up, I just thought somebody watching this would be interested to see the old way of pulling radiators apart and working on them. And I did so many of them, I thought I'd show it off a little bit. So, if you have any questions, I could talk about this for a week because there's so much I didn't cover. But if you have any questions, sure, put them in the comments. I'll answer all the questions in the comments because I read all the comments always. So, yeah, thanks for watching.